had it, and I gave it to Leslie, and
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm filmmaker James Fox, executive producer of Out of the Blue. I'd like to welcome everyone here to today's unprecedented event. As we take pause in honoring our country's servicemen on Veterans Day, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the distinguished panelists for traveling here from so far: Iran, Peru, Chile, and the UK. I also want to thank journalist Leslie Kean, the Coalition for Freedom of Information. Without her, this event could not have happened. Her tireless efforts for the last 3 months were invaluable. Our panelists are about to share with you extraordinary experiences they've had while conducting their duties as high-ranking government, aviation, and military officials. I'm now honored to present our moderator, former Air Force captain and two-term Arizona governor, Fife Symington.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all here today, and I'd like to go over the program with you so that you understand how it will unfold. But first, I'd like to thank James Fox for his unbelievable investigative work and research over the past 12 years on this subject. He has really provided, I think, a great public service in an arena which is met with a great deal of skepticism and I just admire his courage. And I've also very much enjoyed his production Out of the Blue. I think he's done a great job with that. But most importantly today is that he and Leslie Kean are responsible for pulling together this unique panel. I don't think there's ever been a more high-level or distinguished group, authoritative group, that has dealt with this matter in one conference. And I'm very excited to be a small part of it. I would also like to thank Leslie Kean. Again, I'd like to reiterate the fact that, as you know, she's an investigative journalist and director of the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and she has done a fabulous job in this arena and also absorbed a lot of the slings and arrows that are out there in the public arena regarding this subject. But she's done it with great fortitude and in, I think, very good taste. I will make my formal remarks after all the other gentlemen at the table here to my left and right have made their statements. But I would like to just quickly discuss the media format. Each of us is going to make a statement. We'll come up to the podium, give a 2 to 3 minute statement, and then sit down. We're going to roll through that part of the program so that everybody here can hear all of their testimony. After that, I'll stand back up here at the podium, and we will open this up for Q&A for credentialed members of the press. If members of the press, when you stand up and ask a question, if you would state your name and your affiliation, that would be very much appreciated. In my role as the moderator, I guess I also reserve the right to curtail a dialogue that may go on too long or something for the sake of time. We want to make sure we get to everybody and that all serious questions are answered. I would also like to note that there's a document here in front of you, if you're in the audience, to your left, which has been signed by all of us, which is a request for the United States government to reopen, in effect, the investigation into the UFO phenomena, which was terminated back in, I believe, 1969 Project Blue Book. And it's a very interesting document, and you should read it. Without further ado, we'll charge ahead with our first speaker, and we're on our way. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Wilfried de Brouwer. I'm a retired Major General of the Belgian Air Force, and I was Chief Operations in the Air Staff at the time that an exceptional UFO wave took place over Belgium. Indeed, during the evening of 29 November 1989, in a small area in eastern Belgium, approximately 140 UFO sightings were reported. Hundreds of people saw a majestic triangular craft with a span of approximately 120 feet, powerful beaming spotlights, moving very slowly without making any significant noise, but in several cases accelerating to very high speeds. The following days and months, many more sightings would follow. The UFO wave would last more than a year, during which a Belgian UFO organization conducted more than 650 investigations and recorded more than 400 hours of audio witness reports. On one occasion, a photograph revealed the triangular shape and 4 light beams of the object. I have the photograph here if you want to see more details later on, but at the left, at your left, you see the original photograph. At the right, you can see an overexposed photograph which reveals the shape of the craft. Belgium had no official focal point for reporting UFO sightings. Nevertheless, in my function of Chief Operations, I was confronted with numerous questions about the origin and nature of these craft. In first instance, and in consultation with other NATO partners, I could confirm that no flights of stealth aircraft or any other experimental aircraft took place in the airspace of Belgium. In addition, the civil aviation authorities confirmed that no flight plans had been introduced. This implied that the reported objects or craft committed an infraction against the existing aviation rules. The Belgian Air Force tried to identify the alleged intruders and on 3 occasions launched F-16 aircraft. On one occasion, 2 F-16 registered rapid changes in speed and altitude which were well outside of the performance envelope of existing aircraft. Nevertheless, the pilots could not establish visual context, and the investigation revealed that specific weather conditions may have caused electromagnetic interferences and false radar returns. The technical evidence was insufficient to conclude that abnormal air activities took place during that evening. In short, the Belgian UFO wave was exceptional, and the Air Force could not identify the nature, origin, and intentions of the reported phenomena. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claude Poher, retired astrophysicist and space research engineer from the National Center for Space Studies, which is the French equivalent of NASA. I was the founder of the Japan, the Group for the Study of Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena, which was an official agency devoted to the scientific study of UFO observation reports, and which remains active today, 30 years after, under the name of JPAM. I first learned about the existence of official US UFO reports here in Washington early in the 60s from Dr. Allen Hynek, the well-known astronomical consultant of the US Air Force, Project Blue Book. I then began to investigate official UFO reports and undertake a scientific analysis of the data in France. I received approval from CNES to create and direct the Japan about 15 years later, in 1977. I trained our first investigators, teaching them how to conduct official investigations into the different kinds of reports, from lights in the sky to landings with physical evidence and observation of occupants. We had an independent scientific steering committee this committee recommended that we continue to pursue this work during the 2 years of my direction. For example, I trained our investigators and my successors on the case of Cusack, where in August 1967, 2 young witnesses were alerted by the agitation of dozens of frightened farm animals at around noon. The witnesses then observed a landed spherical 3 meters diameter UFO at a distance of 80 yards, with 4 occupants near it. Very high luminosity was reported after slow takeoff, leaving physiological effects on the witnesses' eyes that were confirmed by the village mayor. The hiss noise described by the 2 witnesses was also heard by the hunting guard of the village. The UFO acceleration after vertical takeoff was estimated to be about 100 Gs by Japan experts. The occupants were seen floating in the air while entering the craft from its top, at first in a hurry like this. Physical traces on the ground from the craft were confirmed by the local police, as well as a sulfur oxide odor. CNES experts in meteorology and space debris worked in the field with the witnesses, along with a judge, a psychologist, an optical engineer, and an aeronautical engineer. They had full measuring equipment and work with the police as well. The official conclusion of Japan in 1979 was that about 15% of the cases remained unidentified after careful analysis by our experts. We concluded that the objects in most of these cases were compatible with flying machines whose flight physics were foreign to the experts' knowledge. What I've tasted previously is about the past. Now there are some recent experimental facts in direct relation with my Japan and UFO investigation involvement that I believe personally that are of great importance for our future and for the way you should handle now the UFO observation in the USA. After I left Japan, but remained in CNES, I continued to work in the UFO subject, but in the domain of theoretical physics. Last April, 30 years after, the physical theory about gravitation and inertia I was working on since 1980 was successfully tested in the laboratory. Effectively, I patented and tested in my laboratory devices able to create a strong artificial gravitation field that seems to be the cause of most of the strange effects that are described in UFO observation reports. I'm talking about such effects as tremendous accelerations, sharp turns, sudden stops, powerful emission of light, silent supersonic speed, stopping of cars, paralysis of witnesses, desiccation of vegetation, etc. Personally, I think that this discovery puts an end to many of the scientific enigmas about UFOs. These experimental results are currently open to be demonstrated in my laboratory in Toulouse for qualified scientists, scientific journalists, and industrial representatives, including those from the USA. Evidently, I am concentrating now on the very numerous possibilities of new applications, mainly in the domain of propulsion, of energy generation, and in the domain of health. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Jean-Charles Duboc. I am a retired Air France captain. During Air France flight 3532 from Nice to London on 28 January 1994, I observed with my crew a UFO in broad daylight near Paris. We had few passengers on board, and none of them had reported that observation to the crew. The time was 1 p.m. and the visibility was excellent, with some altocumulus clouds. That object had been identified initially by a steward who was in the cockpit and by the co-pilot as a weather balloon. But when I identified it, it looked quite different. In fact, this UFO was in evolution, and it looked like this, with a bank angle of 45 degrees. It seemed to be a huge flying disc. It stabilized and stopped moving. We observed it over 1 minute on the left of our plane, surprisingly totally stationary in the sky, and it disappeared progressively. This large object was below us at the altitude of 35,000 feet. We were at 39,000 feet, at a distance of about 25 nautical miles. The color was red-brown with blurred outlines. The apparent diameter of this object could be compared to the diameter of the moon or the sun. That means that it was about 1,000 feet wide. We had no idea of the structure of the UFO that seemed to be embedded in a kind of magnetic or gravitational field with no lights or visual metallic structure, which gave it a really fuzzy appearance. The most incredible aspect is that it became transparent and disappeared in about 10 to 20 seconds. My co-pilot, Chief Steward, and I quickly realized that what we were seeing didn't resemble anything known to us, and we reported our sighting to RANS traffic control. Simultaneously, the radar of the Operational Center of the Air Defense, the CODA, registered a 1-minute spot crossing the track of our plane. When I recorded the estimated position of the UFO on an aeronautical map, I was surprised to realize that its position was near the base of Taverny, which hosts the headquarters of the French Strategic Air Command. This sighting has been studied by the French Military Committee group under the direction of General Donizetti and with the participation of several high-ranking officers of the French defense, as well as by JEPAN under the French National Space Center, CNES. The investigations determined this could not have been a weather balloon and estimated the approximate length of the UFO to have been 800 feet. This sighting remains unexplained. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jean-Claude Ribes, and I am an astronomer working for the French Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique from 1963 to 1998. I contributed to the French Cometa report, a 3-year military study on UFOs and national security, released in 1999, and more recently to the book Phénomènes aérospatiaux non identifiés, under the direction of Yves Jahr, chairman of the steering committee of JPAN. He asked me to represent him and JPAN here today. General Donizetti, chairman of the Cometa group, also asked me to represent him here because he was unable to attend. The Cometa report was written mainly by high-ranking military people from the French High Studies Institute for National Defense. It analyzes the possible explanations for UFOs and their implications in terms of defense, with the extraterrestrial hypothesis presented as the most logical one, even if not formally proven. Some recommendations are made, including that all managers of the army, police, politics, and pilots be informed about UFOs, that detection systems be modified to take UFOs into account, and that the French government contact the United States and other allied countries to initiate cooperative action on the subject. So far, these recommendations have not been implemented. However, last March, my country took a big step forward. Jacques Patnais, current director of JPAN, released the French UFO files to the public. They were posted on a website, more than 600,000 sightings spanning 5 decades. Some cases involve multiple sightings and physical evidence, such as burn marks and radar trackings. Others documented UFOs with flight pattern or accelerations defying the laws of physics. Monsieur Patnais told the press at the time that we do not have any proof at all that extraterrestrials are behind the unexplained phenomena, nor do we have any proof at all that they are not. JPAN's steering committee plays an important role with representatives from the army, police, civil aviation, meteorology, and the scientific community. This committee ensures the best conditions for gathering reports by instructing the agencies involved in investigations and protecting any witnesses who request anonymity for fear of ridicule. My personal opinion is that UFOs should be taken seriously and studied without prejudice. There may be several possible explanations, such as rare atmospheric phenomena, but some cases strongly suggest actual flying machines with characteristics well beyond our terrestrial capacities. If these cases could be completely proven as such, then the extraterrestrial hypothesis would probably be the most likely explanation for this advanced craft. Admittedly, it's a fantastic possibility, but not an irrational one, given the data we have. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Parviz Jafari, and I'm a retired general of Iranian Air Force. At about 11 p.m. on the evening of 18 September 1976, citizens were frightened by circling of an unknown object over Tehran, the capital city of Iran, at a low altitude. It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter. They reported it to the tower and was seen by Towerman 2. He alerted the Air Force Command Post, and Deputy General Yousefi decided to scramble an F-4 jet to investigate. The pilot in the first jet lost instrumentation and communication when he got too close to the brilliant object, so he headed back. About 10 minutes later, they scrambled a second jet, which I was piloting. At the time, I was a squadron commander. I approached the object, which was flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue. The light was so bright that I was not able to see its body. The sequence of flashes was extremely fast, like a strobe light. We locked on it with radar it was at 30 degrees left, at range of 25 miles. The size on the radar scope was comparable to that of a 707 tanker. 4 other objects with different shapes separated from the main one at different times during this close encounter. Whenever they were close to me, my weapons were jammed and my radio communications were garbled. One of the objects headed toward me. I thought it was a missile. I tried to launch a heat-seeker missile to it, but my missile panel went out. Another followed me when I was descending on the way back. One of the separated objects landed in an open area radiating a high bright light in which the sands on the ground were visible. We could hear emergency squash at all the way, which was reported by other airliners flying at the time and continued for another couple of days. During my interview at headquarters, after the incident, the American Lieutenant Colonel Alan Moy took notes, but after it was over, I could not find him to talk with. Later, once classified document was released here in America through the Freedom of Information Act. The Defense Intelligence Agency documented the event in a great detail, and it was sent to NSA, the White House, and the CIA. The DIA assessment said this case is a classic that meets all necessary conditions for a legitimate study of the UFO phenomena. Then I would be happy to answer questions and tell you more. Thank you.
Muy buenos días, señoras y señores.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Soy el capitán de Ejército de Chile, Rodrigo Bravo. Soy oficial del Ejército y piloto militar.
I am Rodrigo Bravo, captain and pilot of the Chilean Army.
Desde los inicios de la historia de Chile, existen vestigios, reportes y antecedentes de la observación de fenómenos sin identificación en los cielos de todo el territorio.
Since the beginning of Chilean history, there has been reports of unidentified phenomena, sometimes called UFOs, observed in our skies.
Con el correr de los años, la implementación de nuevas tecnologías se ha logrado determinar explicaciones para algunas de estas observaciones, quedando siempre una porción de reportes sin una respuesta dentro de la ciencia y de la lógica conocida.
Over the years, we have increased our capacity to explain many of the sightings, but some continue to remain without scientific or logical explanation.
Es por tal motivo que en octubre del año 1997, la Dirección General de Aeronáutica Civil de Chile, dependiente de la Fuerza Aérea de Chile, crea el Comité de Estudios de Fenómenos Aéreos Anómalos, CEFAA. Esta agencia tiene y maneja los reportes aéreos de fenómenos aéreos no identificados en cooperación con especialistas en aeronáutica.
For that reason, in October 1997, the Department of Civil Aeronautics, the Chilean equivalent of the American FAA, set up the Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena, known as the CEFA. This agency handles the best reports of unidentified aerial phenomena in cooperation with aeronautic specialists.
En el año 2000, y siguiendo esta estructura aeronáutica, la Brigada de Aviación del Ejército de Chile dispone que realice mi tesis acerca de los fenómenos aéreos no identificados como oficial alumno de la especialidad de piloto militar. debido a que esta unidad tenía en sus registros varios informes de incidentes de vuelo con fenómenos aéreos que no correspondían a tráficos normales.
In 2000, the aviation branch of the Army of Chile assigned me to research anomalous aerial phenomena, which they knew were real and their effect on aerospace security. I then graduated to become a military pilot and learned that the aviation army had in its files many reports of UFO incidents from military pilots.
La conexión entre la aviación del ejército y el CFA ayudó a realizar un avance muy importante en el estudio de los fenómenos aéreos anómalos, entregando hasta el día de hoy un total de 9 informes oficiales. Esto ha ayudado a crear una conciencia en las tripulaciones de vuelo, las cuales hoy en día mantienen una postura abierta con informar situaciones anormales relacionadas con ovnis, cooperando con la seguridad aérea.
A link was then established between our Army office and the CEFA. As a result, 9 official cases have been documented. This has helped to create awareness among the flight crews about UFOs, and they now cooperate with flight security to report any abnormal situation.
El caso más importante de la aviación civil, donde un objeto volador no identificado afecta la seguridad de una operación aérea, ocurre en el año 1988, cuando el piloto de un Boeing 737, en aproximación final al aeropuerto El Tepual de la ciudad de Puerto Montt, se ve forzado a realizar un viraje a la izquierda, evitando colisionar con un objeto que se dirigía en dirección contraria y en ángulo de colisión, cuyas características lo describieron como una luz brillante que cambiaba de colores entre rojo y verde, no apareciendo en el radar, pero sí siendo observado por el personal de la torre de control y del radar del aeropuerto.
One of our most important civil aviation cases occurred in 1988, showing that identified flying objects can be a danger for air operations. A Boeing 737 pilot, on a final approach to the runway at the Tepual Airport in Puerto Montt City, suddenly encountered a large white light surrounded by green and red. The light was moving in the opposite direction of the airplane, coming straight at it. The pilot had to make a steep turn to the left in order to avoid a collision. The phenomenon was observed by the control tower and radar personnel.
En el año 2000, un avión Citation 2, perteneciente a la aviación del Ejército de Chile, volando al sur de Santiago, observa un objeto alargado, con forma de puro de color gris brillante, el cual, en un movimiento anormal, se desplaza quedando al costado derecho del avión, volando paralelo a una corta distancia por 2 minutos.
In 2000, the crew of a Chilean plane from the aviation branch of the Army, flying south of Santiago, observed a long cigar-shaped object, a brilliant gray. It flew parallel to the right side of the aircraft for 2 minutes and then disappeared at very high speed. This object was detected by the radar of the control center of Santiago, which notified the crew minutes before the incident.
Lamentablemente, el tema relacionado con los ovnis se encuentra muy contaminado y con una importante cantidad de información falsa, proveniente de personas no calificadas para realizar y analizar este fenómeno. Esto produce que se aleje completamente este tema del estudio científico y especializado.
Sadly, the UFO subject has been contaminated with false information, out of touch with reality, provided by unqualified people to the media. This has moved the issue away from a scientific and a specialized study where it belongs.
Es por este motivo, hacemos un llamado a todos los países que están actualmente trabajando este tema de manera seria y concreta, incluyendo los Estados Unidos de América, para unir los esfuerzos y realizar cooperación mutua en nuevos descubrimientos y casos que ayuden a desarrollar teorías que permitan contrarrestar los efectos de los fenómenos aéreos no identificados en las operaciones aéreas de todo el mundo.
In light of that problem, we now make the call to all the countries that are presently working on this issue in a serious and factual way to unite their efforts. We would like this to include the United States of America. This cooperative effort will help all of us counteract the potentially unsafe effects of the UFOs on air operations around the world.
Para tal efecto, sabemos que permanentemente se registran observaciones, las cuales provienen de personas relacionadas con el mundo aeronáutico, entre los cuales están los pilotos, controladores, personas de operaciones y apoyo terrestre de todos los aeropuertos, que claramente tienen un conocimiento técnico que permite determinar si un fenómeno corresponde o no a los tráficos que operan regularmente.
New cases are being documented by pilots, traffic controllers, operations staff at the world's airports, and by many others with the proper training to determine if a flying object is something unusual.
El verdadero origen de los ovnis o fenómenos aéreos no identificados es aún desconocido, pero sí es real que afectan ocasionalmente las operaciones aéreas en todo el planeta.
The true origin of the UFOs is unknown, yet they do affect aviation all around the planet, and this must be addressed.
Thank you very much.
Buenos días, damas y caballeros. Mi nombre es Óscar Santamaría Huertas y soy oficial piloto de la Fuerza Aérea del Perú en situación de retiro actualmente.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Oscar Santamaría Huertas, official pilot of the Peruvian Air Force, currently retired.
El 11 de abril de 1980, a las 7:15 horas de la mañana, 1.800 hombres estaban en formación en la base aérea de La Joya, Arequipa.
On April 11, 1980, at 7:15 in the morning, 1,800 men were in formation at the airbase of La Joya, Arequipa.
Todos ellos observaron un objeto estacionario en el aire, que parecía un globo, como a 5 kilómetros de distancia y a unos 600 metros de altitud. Era luminoso porque reflejaba el sol.
They all observed a stationary object in the sky which looked like a balloon at about 3 miles distance and approximately 1,800 feet altitude. It was luminous because it reflected the sun.
Mi comandante de unidad me dio la orden de despegar en mi jet Sukhoi 22 para dispararle al objeto esférico, porque estaba en espacio prohibido, sin permiso, y temíamos espionaje.
My unit commander ordered me to take off in my Sukhoi 22 jet to shoot down the spherical object. It was in restricted airspace without clearance, and we were concerned about espionage.
Yo me acerqué al objeto y le disparé 64 obuses de 30 milímetros. Algunos obuses fueron contra el terreno y otros le pegaron de lleno al objeto, pero sin ningún efecto. Los obuses no rebotaron, probablemente fueron absorbidos. La pared de fuego en forma de cono que yo mandé normalmente hubiera destruido cualquier objeto en su camino.
I approached the object and strapped 64 30mm shells at it. Some projectiles went towards the ground and others hit the object fully, but they had no effect at all. The projectiles didn't bounce off, probably they were absorbed. The cone-shaped wall of fire that I sent out will normally obliterate anything in its path.
El objeto entonces empezó a subir y a alejarse de la base. Y cuando yo estaba a unos 11.000 metros, de repente se detuvo, forzándome a salir del lado porque ya me encontraba a solo 500 metros de él. Entonces hice un ascenso para atacarlo desde arriba, pero justo cuando ya lo había centrado en la mira y estaba listo a disparar, el objeto hizo un ascenso vertical evadiendo mi ataque.
The object then began to ascend and move farther away from the base. When I was about 30,000 feet, it made a sudden stop, forcing me to veer to the side since I was only 1,500 feet away. I flew up higher to attack it from above, but just as I had locked on the target and was ready to shoot, the object made a straight vertical climb, evading the attack.
2 veces más tuve al objeto en la mira, cuando éste se encontraba estacionario, y cada vez se alejó al último momento antes de mi disparo, siempre evadiendo mi ataque.
2 more times I had the object on target, when the object was stationary. Each time it moved away at the very last minute, when I was about to fire, always eluding my attack.
Entonces, decidí hacer un ascenso a toda velocidad para ponerme muy por encima del objeto, pero este empezó a subir también y casi en paralelo con mi avión. Cuando sobrepasé los 19.000 metros, el objeto se detuvo.
I decided to climb at full thrust to get above the object, but it began to ascend almost parallel to my plane, and when I reached 63,000 feet, it stopped.
Fue entonces que me acerqué a 100 metros del objeto. Tenía unos 10 metros de diámetro, estaba como esmaltado con una cúpula de color crema sobre una base metálica ancha y circular. No tenía motores, ni escapes, ni ventanas, ni alas o antenas. Carecía de todos los implementos típicos de un avión y sin ningún sistema visible de propulsión.
At this point, I came to within about 300 feet of the UFO. It was about 30 feet in diameter. It was enamel, cream-colored dome with a wide circular metallic base. It had no engines, no exhaust, no windows, no wings or antenna. It lacked all the typical aircraft components with no visible propulsion system.
Fue en ese momento que me di cuenta que esto no era un objeto para espiar, sino que era un ovni, algo completamente desconocido. Ya casi no tenía combustible, o sea que ya no podía ni atacar ni maniobrar mi avión, tampoco escaparme a alta velocidad y sentí temor, quizás este era mi fin.
It was at that moment that I realized was not a spying device, but that it was a UFO, something totally unknown. I was almost out of fuel, so I couldn't attack or maneuver my plane or make a high-speed escape. I was afraid. I thought I might be finished.
Entonces logré calmarme y avisé por radio que otro avión viniera para echar un vistazo. Me dijeron que no, que estaba demasiado alto, que simplemente me regresara. Tuve que planear parte de mi descenso por falta de combustible, haciendo zigzag y siempre viendo por mis espejos retrovisores con la esperanza de que el objeto no me persiguiera. No pasó nada.
When I had calmed down, I radioed for another plane to come and I have a look trying to hide my fear. They say, no, it's too high, just come back. I had to glide part way down due to lack of fuel, zigzagging to make my plane harder to hit, always with my eyes on the rear view mirrors, hoping it wouldn't chase me. It didn't.
Pasé 22 minutos de maniobras contra el objeto. Después de que aterricé, el objeto permaneció estacionario en el cielo por 2 horas más a la vista de todos en la base.
I had spent 22 minutes maneuvering with this object. After I landed, the object remained stationary in the sky for 2 hours for everyone at the base to see.
Un documento del Ministerio de la Defensa de los Estados Unidos, intitulado OVNI visto en Perú, describió el incidente, diciendo que el origen del objeto sigue desconocido.
A U.S. Department of Defense document titled UFO Sighted in Peru described the incident, stating that the vehicle's origin remains unknown.
Todavía me da escalofrío cuando me acuerdo.
It still gives me chills to think about it.
Muchas gracias.
Damas y caballeros, soy el doctor Anthony Choi, miembro fundador de la Oficina de Investigación de Fenómenos Aéreos Anómalos, o IFA, de la Fuerza Aérea del Perú, y un investigador para esta oficina. Esta agencia fue establecida por la Fuerza Aérea Peruana en diciembre del 2001.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Anthony Choi, founding member of the Office of Investigation of Anomalous Area Phenomena, o IFA, and an investigator for this office. This agency was established by the Peruvian Air Force in December 2001.
Soy autor del proyecto 33, primer estudio integral sobre este tema en el Perú. He viajado por todo el país durante 9 años, hablando con testigos, obteniendo información audiovisual como fotografías y videos y recolectando información sobre este tema.
I'm the author of Project 33, the first integral study of the UFO phenomenon in Peru. I traveled all over my country for about 9 years, speaking with witnesses, obtaining audiovisual information such as photographs and videos, and collecting data for this study.
El 13 de octubre del año 2001, en la ciudad de Chulucanas, al norte del Perú, ante cientos de personas, 8 inmensas esferas de luz de intenso color rojo anaranjado fueron grabadas en video. Nosotros fuimos los primeros en obtener estas imágenes y las entregamos a la Fuerza Aérea. Estos objetos permanecieron más de 5 horas flotando y moviéndose aparentemente de manera inteligente y en completo silencio hasta desaparecer.
On October 13, 2001, in the northern city of Chulucanas, and before hundreds of people, 8 spheres of light of an intense red-orange color were recorded on video. We were the first ones to obtain this video, and we gave it to the Air Force. These objects were suspended in the air for over 5 hours. moving in an apparently intelligent manner and in absolute silence until they disappear.
Días después, el 25 de octubre, fue grabado un objeto luminoso en forma de lágrima de aproximadamente 25 metros de diámetro sobre la campiña cercana a la ciudad. A los pocos minutos son registrados el aparente aterrizaje de dos esferas de luz de en medio de los árboles circundantes.
A few days later, on October 25th, the luminous tear-shaped object of some approximate 80 feet was recorded over the countryside near the city. Within a few minutes, the apparent landing of light spheres in the wood was also recorded.
En febrero del 2003, la OIFA, organismo de la Fuerza Aérea Peruana, me ordenó investigar estos avistamientos.
In February 2002, the Air Force OIFA ordered me to investigate these sightings.
Asumiendo la responsabilidad de las pesquisas del llamado Incidente Chulucanas, es que en febrero del 2003 el coronel FAP, José Rafa Moloche, director de Intereses Aeroespaciales de la Fuerza Aérea, reconoció ante los medios de comunicación que el incidente Chulucanas era la primera investigación ovni oficial en el Perú.
Taking responsibility for the so-called Chulucanas incident in February 2003, Peruvian Air Force Colonel José Rafa Moloches, Director of Aerial and Space Concerns, made an open statement to the media acknowledging that the Chulucanas incident was the first official UFO investigation in Peru.
La conclusión preliminar fue que los avistamientos, siendo físicamente reales, no tenían explicación. El caso sigue abierto y la investigación la sigo de manera independiente.
The preliminary conclusion was that the sightings, although being physically real, had no explanation. The case remained open and the investigation continues independently done by me.
El clímax llegó cuando el 6 de agosto del año 2004, junto con un equipo de la cadena de televisión norteamericana Univision, grabamos durante 55 largos minutos un lejano objeto de origen y naturaleza desconocida que se movía en el cielo a gran velocidad, de arriba a abajo, de izquierda a derecha.
The climax occurred on August 6 of 2004 when, in collaboration with the American television channel of Univision, we were able to record for 55 minutes a distant object of unknown nature and origin, moving at great velocity in the sky, going up and down and right and left.
Creo que la Fuerza Aérea del Perú ha hecho lo correcto al abrir una oficina de investigación. La evidencia que nosotros tenemos sobre casos e incidentes que realmente han sucedido en nuestro país demuestra que el fenómeno ovni sigue siendo uno de los grandes desafíos para nuestro actual conocimiento científico y tecnológico.
I believe the Air Force in Peru has done the right thing by opening an office to conduct these investigations. The evidence we have from actual UFO cases and incidents that have taken place in our country show that the UFO phenomenon remains one of the greatest challenges to our current knowledge of science and technology.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming this morning. My name is Ray Bowyer, and I fly a civilian airliner as captain. I've been invited here due to my sighting last April of multiple as yet unidentified objects over the Channel Islands region of the English Channel. This encounter lasted for 15 minutes, and the first object being visible from 55 miles distance. On nearing the object, a second identical shape appeared beyond the first. Both objects were of a flattened disc shape with a dark area to the right. They were brilliant yellow with light emanating from within, and I estimated them to be up to possibly a mile across. I found myself astounded but curious, but at 12 miles distant these objects were becoming uncomfortably large, and I was glad to descend and land the aircraft. Many of my passengers saw the objects, as did the pilot of another aircraft 25 miles further south. There is also possible radar information still being investigated. A team headed by Dr. David Clark looking at this case will shortly be published will shortly publish a report, but I understand that this time no definitive solution has been discovered to explain the sighting as yet. I've taken note of some of the differences between the British and the US reporting system. It appears that attitudes on opposite sides of the Atlantic are very different when it comes to the required reporting and recording of this type of event. Air law stipulates quite clearly that if an operating crew of an aircraft see another aircraft in a place that it shouldn't be, then at the earliest opportunity, the whole scenario is to be reported to the relevant authorities. In my case, the British Civil Aviation Authority knew within 20 minutes of the sighting what was seen as described in the flight log and faxed directly to the relevant CAA office. The military were informed by Jersey Air Traffic Control at the same time. This is not an option. This is an obligation that crews react in this manner. In my experience, having reported the incident as required has had no negative effect, and there was no problem with me talking about this on British television. Indeed, my company, Aurigny Air Services, have offered every support to date. The assistance of Jersey Air Traffic Control in releasing recorded information to myself and the investigating team has been of great benefit. I did not feel that I was in any danger of being ridiculed because all I did was report what actually happened, as was my duty as operating aircrew. I heard about the multiple witness sightings at Chicago O'Hare Airport about a year ago now, on November the 7th, 2006. I was surprised to hear how it was handled. Despite many pilots and airport personnel witnessing the object hovering over the terminal, there was no investigation at all by the FAA. It appears that pressure may have been applied to crew members by their company not to discuss this incident. I would have been shocked if I was told that the CAA in UK would obstruct an investigation, or if the CAA told me that what I had seen was something entirely different. But it seems that pilots in America are used to this sort of thing here. I would urge all fellow aircrew to report whatever they see as soon as possible and to stand up and be counted. It's only when crucial and critical witnesses such as aircrew make reports that the authorities will be kick-started into a broader investigation of this phenomena. Thank you very much.
My name's Nick Pope, formerly with the British Ministry of Defence. Since 1950, the British government has received over 10,000 UFO reports. Now, responsibility for this subject rests with the Ministry of Defence, whose remit is to look for evidence of any potential threat to the United Kingdom or anything else of any defence significance. From 1991 through to 1994, I was the desk officer responsible for these investigations. Most UFO sightings turned out to be misidentifications of things such as aircraft, satellites and meteors. But in around 5% of cases, no explanation could be found. And these cases included incidents where reliable witnesses, such as police officers and pilots, reported structured craft performing speeds and manoeuvres significantly in excess of anything that they'd seen military jet aircraft perform. Other cases, including in this category, involved UFOs tracked on radar and incidents where photos or videos were produced and where the MOD's technical experts found no evidence of any faking. The MOD actually takes no position on the nature of the UFO phenomenon, but I and some of my colleagues became privately convinced that whatever was going on, there were serious defence, national security and flight safety issues involved. In March 1993, I investigated a case where a UFO was seen by about 60 witnesses, including military personnel at 2 Air Force bases. Witnesses included a patrol of Air Force police and a meteorological officer with 8 years' experience. Now, this latter witness described a triangular-shaped craft moving in an erratic way. It was midway in size between a C-130 transport aircraft and a Boeing 747. He said it was emitting a low-frequency humming sound, and he said it moved slowly at first before accelerating away to the horizon many times faster than a military jet. My head of division's brief to the Assistant Chief of the Air Staff concluded, quote, "In summary, there would seem to be some evidence on this occasion that an unidentified object or objects of unknown origin was operating over the UK," unquote. The case file, published on the MOD's website, also mentions related inquiries from the US authorities, asking if the UK had a black program that might explain some UFO sightings involving large triangular-shaped craft. Now that's interesting, given the US government's public position that UFOs are no longer investigated. Britain's best-known UFO sighting occurred in 1980 and involved United States Air Force personnel from 2 military bases in the UK. There were multiple witnesses, and an object was seen to land in a place called Rendlesham Forest. A Geiger counter was used to take radiation readings at the landing site, and the assessment undertaken by the MOD's Defence Intelligence staff stated that the levels recorded seemed, quote, significantly higher than the average background, unquote. We're fortunate to have 2 of the witnesses to these events here today, and I'd like to hand over to one of them now so he can give you some specifics. Thank you.
I'm not sure if it's good morning or good evening or good afternoon here. It's 12 o'clock. My name is James Peniston, United States Air Force retired. In 1980, I was assigned to the largest tactical fighter wing in the Air Force at the time. I was stationed at RAF Woodbridge, England. I was the senior security officer in charge of that base security. At that time, I held a top secret U.S. and NATO security clearance and was responsible for the protection of the war-making resources for that base. Shortly after midnight on the 26th of December 1980, Staff Sergeant Steffens briefed me that some lights were seen in Rendlesham Forest, just outside the back gate. He informed me that whatever he seen didn't crash. He told me it landed. I discounted that and reported to the control center at the base that we had a possible downed aircraft. I then ordered Airman Kabanzak, A1C Burroughs to respond with me off-site. When we arrived to the suspected crash site, it quickly became apparent that we were not dealing with a plane crash, or for that matter, anything else we've ever responded to. There was a bright light emanating from an object on the forest floor. As we approached it on foot, a silhouetted triangular craft about 9 feet long, 6.5 feet high, came into view. The craft was fully intact and sitting in a small clearing just inside the woods. As the 3 of us got closer to the craft, we started experiencing radio difficulties. I then asked Airman Kabanzak to relay the radio transmissions back to our control center, act as a relay. Burroughs and I proceeded towards the craft. When we came up on the triangular-shaped craft, there were blue and yellow lights swirling around the exterior as though they were part of the surface. The air around us was electrically charged, and we could feel it on our clothes, our skin, and our hair. Nothing in my training prepared me for what I was witnessing. After 10 minutes without any apparent aggression, I determined the craft was non-hostile to my team and to the base. Following the security protocols, we completed a thorough on-site investigation. This included a full physical examination of the craft, which included photographs and my notebook entries that I had at the time, and relays with the radio through Airman Kabanzak to our control center. Those were required. On one side of the craft, there were symbols that measured 3 inches high, and they're approximately about 2.5 feet long. These symbols were pictorial in design. The largest symbol was a triangle and was centered in the middle of the others. These symbols were etched into the surface of the craft, which was warm to the touch. Even though it looked like black onyx, it felt like metal. The feeling I had during the encounter was like no type of aircraft that I've ever seen before. It was in the Jane's book of known aircraft or anything I've seen since. After roughly about 45 minutes, the light from the craft began to intensify. Burroughs and I then took a defensive position away from the craft as it lifted off the ground without any noise or air disturbance. It maneuvered through the trees and shot off at an unbelievable rate of speed. It was gone in a blink of an eye. In my law book that I have right here, I wrote, speed, impossible. That night, over 80 Air Force personnel, all trained observers assigned to the 81st Security Police Squadron, witnessed the takeoff. The information acquired during that investigation was reported through my military channels. The team and witnesses were told to treat the investigation as top secret, and no further discussion would be allowed. The photographs that we retrieved from the base lab, 2 rolls of 35 millimeter, of course, were apparently overexposed. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles I. Halt. In 1991, I retired from the U.S. Air Force as a colonel. I was base commander of two large military installations, and at my time of my retirement was Director of Inspections Directorate for the DoD Inspector General. In that capacity, I had inspection oversight of all military services and defense agencies. In 1980, I was the Deputy Base Commander, RAF Bentwaters, the largest twin base complex in East Anglia. At the time, this was the largest tactical fighter wing in the Air Force. In late December 1980, I was called upon to investigate a very strange event, an event that was distracting our security police from their primary duties. Early on the morning of 26 December 1980, our police patrolman discovered strange lights in the forest east of the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. 3 patrolmen were dispatched to investigate. They reported a strange craft, triangular in shape, sitting on 3 legs. The craft was approximately 3 meters on a side. It had multiple lights. It rapidly maneuvered and quickly disappeared. I was not immediately aware of all the details, only being told of strange lights, and I assumed there was a reasonable explanation for this. 2 nights later at the family Christmas party, I was interrupted by the on-duty police commander. He told of strange events and said it was back. Since my boss had to present awards, I was tasked to go out and investigate. I fully expected to find an explanation. I took 2 senior patrolmen with me, a disaster preparedness expert, and the reporting on-duty police officer. At the site, we found 3 1.5-inch indentations, triangular in pattern. Now today I have a plaster cast of one of those 3 indentations. And as you can see, it's about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches deep, and about 9 inches across. An interesting point is that the forest floor there was very hard-packed sand. In order to make 3 impressions of this nature, it would have had to have been a very heavy object. We discovered mild radiation and evidence of broken branches on the trees. We suddenly observed a very bright red-orange object. It was oval and with a black center. It reminded me of an eye, and it appeared to be winking or blinking. It maneuvered horizontally through the trees with an occasional vertical movement. When approached, it receded and silently broke into 5 white objects. We moved out of the forest and onto a pasture and observed several objects in the sky, multiple objects to the north. They changed shape from elliptical around. Several other objects were seen to the south. One approached at a very high speed and sent down a strange beam right at our feet. It was different than an ordinary light and it didn't radiate. It was more like a laser beam. Another object sent down beams of light into the weapons storage area. The whole time we had difficulty communicating with the base, as all three radio frequencies that we were using kept breaking up. This activity continued for about an hour. During this entire event, I was fortunate to have with me my small pocket recorder. It's a little linear recorder that I carried around the base usually to take notes because I didn't like to write much. So I recorded all the significant events that happened that night. Unfortunately, the tape recorder is no longer functional, but I do have a tape and a good copy of it. I have no idea what we saw that night, but I do know with great certainty it was under intelligent control. I thank you for your attention and will be available for questions after.
What I'm about to tell you is about an event that never happened. I used to tell the people before when we get done it's one of these things that says, who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or the government? I'm John Callahan. I was the Division Chief of the Accidents, Evaluations, and Investigation Division of the FAA in Washington for 6 years during the 1980s. In early January 1987, I received a call from the Air Traffic Quality Control Branch in the FAA's Alaskan region office. They were requesting guidance and what to tell the media who were overflowing their office. The media was requesting information about the UFO that chased the Japanese 747 across the Alaskan skies for some 31 minutes at flight level 310, 31,000 and 35,000 feet. Somehow the word got out. What UFOs? When did this take place? Why wasn't Washington headquarters informed? Hey, the guy says, who believes in UFOs? I just need to know what to tell the media to get them out of here. The answer was simple. Tell them it's under investigation. And then I said, wrap it all up. I want the disc, I want the tapes, I want everything you have over there, and I want it at the FAA's Tech Center tomorrow morning. That means he has to put it on the midnight flight, the red line, and it's a pain to get all that done. Japanese airline flight 1628 was a cargo jet with a pilot, co-pilot, and one crew member. They were just north of Anchorage. It was about 11 p.m., but that's the time is not really correct. It was closer to 5. When the pilot first reported the UFO, he described it as a huge ball with lights running around it. He said it was about 4 times bigger than the 747 he was riding. And remember, the 747 has an elevator. And he's looking out the window and he sees something that's 4 times the size of his aircraft. He said he saw it with his eyes, his lying eyes, he saw it. The co-pilot with him saw it, and the other crew member all saw it visually. Over the course of the next 31 minutes, the UFO jumped miles in a few seconds. The radar sweep at that antenna was like 10 seconds. So at one time he says it's over here at 12 o'clock and 8 miles, and when the antenna goes by, we see a target there. 10 seconds later, it is now behind him, 6, 7 miles behind him. So it's going from 8 miles out here to 6 or 7 miles back here, really in like 5 or 6 seconds, okay? After receiving the data from Alaska almost 2 months later after this happened, I briefed my boss, Harvey Safir, and the FAA administrator at the time was Admiral Ingen. And the Admiral said to go to the Tech Center, find out what's happening, I want to know what's going on. Now, the FAA had developed a program that was capable of recreating the traffic on the controller's scope. We call it today a plan view display, PVD. I instructed the FAA specialist to synchronize the voice tapes with the radar data so we could hear everything the controller and the pilot said, and we could be looking at the scope at the same time. So it would be as if you were standing behind the controller watching what was going on. The printout and radar playback displayed primary targets in the vicinity of the 747. These target returns were displayed about the same time and place as the pilot advised viewing the UFO. And if we had the capability of showing you this, you would see it also. Of course, the CIA said you can't see it because it's not there. Now, both the radar and manual controller observed the primary target. The military controllers also viewed the primary target on their radar, and they identified it as a double primary, a very large primary. The pilot and crew viewed the target on their radar, and they were also able to see the huge UFO out there with their own eyes. Now, if this craft had been a Learjet or a military aircraft in today's air traffic operations, when the pilot looks out the window and sees somebody shooting across his nose or flying along with him, the first thing he does is call air traffic and say, "Hey, do you have traffic at my altitude?" And the controller would panic, looks at the scope and says, "No, we don't have any traffic at your altitude." Well, it's an unknown. The air traffic controller then says, "We will track that guy until he lands, and we'll have flight standards meet him down there. We're going to write him up, we'll pull his ticket, we'll do whatever we have to do." But the pilot basically said, "It's a UFO." Well, who believes in UFOs? And this is the kind of attitude that the air traffic had at the time. So when I went back to headquarters, I gave Admiral England a quick briefing and showed him the video. He set up a briefing with the President Reagan scientific staff, and he told me my function was to hand this operation off to those people. And those people ended up being the CIA, the President's group, a bunch of grunts that came to the meeting. The Admiral says, "I want you to hand it off because the FAA does not control UFOs, and we want it out of our district." Now, I brought a copy of the videotape I made. I had bought a camera for Christmas just before this happened, and I took a videotape of it. When I got home, I showed it to my wife and my neighbors, and I made a copy of it. When I went to the briefing, we put on this video for the people there 2 or 3 times. So it takes, a half hour, so we'll talk about an hour and a half or so. They asked a bunch of questions, very intelligent questions. They wanted to know the speed of the antenna. They wanted to know the frequency of the antenna. They wanted to know the beam width of the antenna. They wanted to know the algorithm for the height finding equipment. And the people I brought up in the room were all headquarters technical engineers, hardware and software people, and they gave those answers like they were a high school math coach. A squared, B squared, C squared. They spit that stuff right out. It was really amazing to watch these guys work. When they got done, the CIA said to all the people there, "This event never happened. We were never here. And you're all sworn to secrecy. We are confiscating all this data." And they did. They took everything that was in the room. In those days, when you printed out something from the computer, it printed out boxes and boxes and boxes of these printouts. You remember these from the days when we used to see it on TV? Boxes and boxes of this stuff. This is titled UFO Incident at Anchorage on 11/18/86. And it tells you what data is in here. So we could take a chart and we could reproduce everything that the controller's seen on a piece of paper. Well, they took all that data. A few days later, they brought in, or a few weeks later, I guess it was, they brought in the FAA's report of the event that never happened. I had them put it on a little table in my room in a corner, and I said, "Well, leave it there, and when the CIA wants the rest of the data, I'm sure they're going to come and get it." Not too long after that, they brought the voice tapes for the same incident, and we put that on top of that package, waiting for the CIA to come and get it. Now, when I was at the tech center, I had the software engineers and the hardware engineers put together a chart that would show every target along the route of flight. And what they did is they commented on it. This is when we first saw the UFO. This is when the pilot saw the UFO. This is when the military guy saw the UFO, all the way down here. And there's 2 of these. It's ripped off here a little bit because it ended up in my barn for a couple of years, and I didn't know it was in the box. and the mice were eating it. When I get done with this briefing, now we're talking to the engineers that build the air traffic control system, hardware and software. When they got done hanging this up on the wall, I said, tell me what those dots are. What is it? The hardware engineers got up and said, this problem over here, that's a software problem. And this one over here, software problem. Every time, all the way down, it's a software problem. There's nothing wrong with our hardware system. So I said, fine. It makes sense to me. So the software guy gets up, and he says, this target over here, that's a hardware problem. And this one here, a hardware problem. There was no software problems, and there was no hardware problems. Well, what do we have? If we don't have anything, do we have a target there or not? Well, one man got up and said, my religion forbids me to believe in UFOs. So I said, fine. I gave the briefing. They carried all the stuff. They took it out. This stuff stayed in my office for 2 years. When I left, one of the specialists came in there in a hurry to get me out. They packed up everything that was hanging there, all the stuff on the walls, and they put it in boxes and shipped it to my house. Today, I like to say that most people working as FAA controllers, they're not really familiar with how the FAA system works. They don't know why aircraft traveling through our airspace is not displayed under scope. They don't know why. I do, but they don't. The system today in the organization of the FAA is not configured to identify and track these type of performances. That's the end of my speech. Who are you going to believe? Your lying eyes or the government?
Thank you, Inspector Callahan. You beat Clint Eastwood hands down. That was great. My remarks are pretty short. I'm Fife Symington. In 1997, during my second term as governor of Arizona, I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality. I witnessed a massive delta-shaped craft that silently navigated over the Squaw Peak area in North Phoenix in the evening, and it was truly breathtaking. To my astonishment, it appeared to be a solid structure. It was huge. It had a very distinctive leading edge with huge embedded lights in it, and it was just traveling quietly, made no sound, through the Arizona night sky. I still don't know what it was. As a pilot and a former Air Force officer, I can definitively say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object that I'd ever seen, and it was certainly not high-altitude flares as put out by the Air Force at Luke Air Force Base, because I've never seen flares fly in formation. The incident was witnessed by hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Maricopa County and in southern Arizona, and my office was besieged with phone calls from very concerned citizens. The growing hysteria intensified when the story broke nationally, and so I decided to lighten the mood of the state, and I called a press conference where I dressed up my chief of staff in a Martian outfit. It was meant to be a spoof, a good-natured spoof. That worked. We managed to lessen the sense of panic at the time, but I also upset quite a few of my constituents. Well, I'd like now to set the record straight. I never meant to ridicule anyone. My office did make inquiries as to the origin of the craft, but to this day they remain unanswered. Eventually, the Air National Guard claimed responsibility, stating that their pilots had been dropping flares. They also, another individual from Tucson said that A-10s had been flying in formation over Maricopa County, but those of us in the Air Force, and those of you who know about A-10s, they're called the Warthog, it's a tank-killing aircraft, know that it's the noisiest machine in the sky, and there's no way that a flight of A-10s could come over Maricopa County and be quiet. That just doesn't work. So we get these explanations that fly in the face of facts, explanations like weather balloons, swamp gas, military flares, and hardware and software problems. I was never happy with this silly explanation. There might very well have been military flares in the sky that evening, but that sure wasn't what I and what hundreds of my fellow citizens saw. Well, I now know that I'm not alone in witnessing something extraordinary. That's the bottom line. There are many high-ranking military, aviation, and government officials, many of whom are here today, who share my concerns. Some of them have truly exceptional stories to tell. There's absolutely no doubt as to the veracity of what these men have told you. They have fought in wars, they have guarded top-secret weapons, and they've flown countless passengers throughout the world's skies. Incidents like these are not going away. 1 year ago, Chicago's O'Hare Airport experienced a UFO event that made national and international headlines. Pilots and many other airline employees observed a metallic-looking disc hovering over the United Airlines terminal for several minutes, and then it shot straight up into the sky, cut a hole in the sky, disappeared. The FAA apparently did not investigate, dismissed the sightings as weather. We want the United States government to stop perpetuating the myth that all UFOs can be explained away in down-to-earth and conventional terms. Instead, our country needs to reopen its official investigation that it shut down in 1969. The United States government can no longer shun an international dialogue about this phenomenon, and we invite the government to work in cooperation with countries as represented on both sides of me here today. When it comes to events of this nature, dealing with the great unknown, we deserve, I believe, more openness and a serious pursuit of the facts by our government. Thank you very much.